Hey guys, welcome to your very first lesson in geometry. So grab your notebooks and your pencils and your highlighters and let's get started. When you first started working with geometry and all the way through it, you're going to have a lot of vocabulary, a lot of definitions. We'll try to make them as painless as possible. But the first three words that we start with, you kind of already know them, and we call them the three undefined terms of geometry. It means that we really can't define these words, but we can describe them. So what we're going to do right now is describe them, and this kind of lays the foundation, and then from now on we'll be moving in more into concrete definitions. So when you're thinking about these, just kind of think of the idea rather than a cut and dried definition, because there is not one. So the first thing we want to look at is called the point. And a point looks like that. It looks like a dot. I'll make it a little bigger to make sure you can see it. A point looks like a dot. And it is always named with a capital letter, any capital letter that you want. So I'll just use capital A. So if I'm talking about a point and I need to name it something so I can talk to you about it, then I'll call it a capital letter of my choice. And I think about, well, what is a point and how big is a point? Well, a point really has no size. That's why we can't really define it. It has no dimension, it has no width, it has no depth, it has no length. So really a point is more about a location than it is an actual thing. So let's say we're talking about a point, that we're going to all understand that we're really talking about a location. Something else that we want to write down and understand about a point is it really has no size. You don't have one point bigger than another point. They're just points, they're just ideas. They're where things start and where things end. Let's also think about, and we said that they look like a dot, and a point also has no dimensions. And again, I mean that it has no length, has no width, has no depth. It is just an idea. Okay, now let's look at line. We all know what a line is, and it goes without saying now from now on that whenever I say line, it means a straight line. So lines are straight. So let's write that down. Lines definitely are straight. And the notation that we're going to use to indicate that we have a line looks like this. Let's say that we have a line over here. And we put the arrows on the end because just like in a number line in algebra, a line goes infinitely in both directions. It never stops, it never starts. Okay? It's just an idea and it goes forever and forever. So a line is infinite. It has one dimension. And that is length. So a line has length. It does not have a measurable length. You cannot measure how long a line is because it goes on forever and ever and ever. But it does represent length. How would we name this line right here? If we wanted to name it, first of all, we need to understand and think about points again. A line is a set of points. It's like millions of points on a line. So there's a point here, there's a point here, there's a point here, there's a point here. It's solid points. It's all made up of points jammed right close together. You can pick any two of those points, name them with a capital letter because that's how we name points. So I'll pick this one right here, and I'll call that one point A, and I'll pick this one right here, and I'll call that one point B. As I said, it doesn't matter which 2 points on the line that you choose, any 2 points will make a line. So we pick any 2 points, we name them, and then the way that we refer to that line is we say that that is line AB, and we put a little arrow like that over the top of it. it doesn't matter which order you put that in. So you could also say that it is line BA. It would mean the same thing. And sometimes you'll see a line named like this, like L for line, and it'll be like a cursive line, L, like in a lowercase. So it would be like, that might be that, and so you could also name that very same line. Sometimes you'll see it written this way, line L. And really, I mean, the main thing that's important is just to communicate so that we know what we're talking about, and it will almost always be clear. But you just want to get in really good habits of watching your details around naming things. And so far, I've said everything. This is a capital letter. That's our point. This is the first time line L is named generally with a smaller lowercase letter, and it doesn't have to be L, but it usually is. Our next one, let's talk about a plane. A plane has two dimensions. I'll abbreviate. And it has the dimension of length and it has the dimension of width. So it has two dimensions. It has length and it has width. But a plane has no depth. It has no thickness. So when we think about how would we represent a plane, we really think of it as a flat surface that has no depth. Like I could think of this board right here would represent a plane. If I could just think of it as being infinitely thin, it has no thickness. That's why it's so hard to define these. It's actually impossible to define them because they really turn out to be just ideas and thoughts. So a plane has no thickness to it. It is just the idea of a flat surface that extends infinitely in every direction. So how do we draw a plane and how do we label it and name it? Well, if we want to draw a plane, usually you will see it like this. And then you'll see a cursive uppercase letter. It could be any letter. I'll use K. And it's it's like that. So that would be referred to as plain K. The letter isn't important. Usually you'll see it in the corner, any corner, and usually you'll see it as a capital cursive letter like so. So that would be referred to, and that would be the way that we would draw something to represent a plane. So if we were looking to something to represent a plane, let's say that we could use a sheet of paper. Of course, a sheet of paper is not really a plane because the plane has no boundaries lengthwise and widthwise. But a piece of paper is so thin, it's still thicker than a plane. A plane has no depth. But it reminds us, it's the closest that we can come to saying this is a plane and this represents a plane to us. If we're looking for something to represent a line, we might think of like a very thin wire. Like a very thin wire or a thread that was perfectly straight. So I'll say that maybe for a line we could say a very thin wire. But again, wire would end eventually. And so it would have end points, whereas a line never would. So again, we're describing a line, not trying to define it. And for a point, we use a dot, or we use like the head of a pen. Just to represent a dot, a point. So we're talking a lot about points and lines and planes as we go, but this will always be our basis. And anytime your teacher, anybody says, what are the three undefined terms in geometry, you'll say, oh, I know, point, line, and plane. Everything else we define, but you know what? We're going to use these three terms to define so many other things. So we're going to stop right there for this first lesson and leave you some time to work with these ideas, and they are ideas, until you feel perfectly comfortable in taking these and working with them as your tools.